A 45-year-old woman lay in a hospital bed, her skin yellowed by liver failure. Her doctors offered a straightforward, life-saving treatment: stop drinking. She refused. When the psychiatric team asked why she would choose death, she told them, "I guess I like liquor better than life." This chart reveals the staggering annual death tolls in the United States alone. While illicit drugs claim tens of thousands of lives, alcohol kills 100,000 people every year, and tobacco takes 480,000. This level of self-destruction overrides the most basic drive we have, the drive to survive. Natural selection acts as a filter for living organisms. It typically eliminates the genetic traits that cause individuals to die before they can pass on their genes. If evolution relentlessly scrubs out fatal flaws, the persistence of addiction is a mystery. We have to ask why humans remain so vulnerable to early, preventable deaths from substance use. Evolution failed to eliminate these traits because addiction exploits the very biological software that keeps us alive. Our vulnerability begins with our capacity for reinforcement learning. Rather than relying entirely on rigid, pre-programmed instincts, humans adapt to their environments by trial and error. When our ancestors performed actions that increased their biological fitness, like finding nutritious food or making social connections, subtle sensory cues triggered tiny, calibrated blips of dopamine. Those internal chemical rewards taught the brain to repeat whatever action it just took. That same dopamine system structures our activities into discrete bouts. Satiation naturally kicks in, the reward drops, and we stop eating or working, so we can move on to the next task required for survival. Our survival depends on this automatically regulated system of sensory inputs and controlled rewards to navigate the world. The chemicals that short-circuit this balance come from plants. Plants do not produce psychoactive compounds for human enjoyment. They manufacture them as a natural defense mechanism. Compounds like nicotine, cocaine, and caffeine are neurotoxins. Natural selection shaped them to disrupt the nervous systems of insects, paralyzing the pests trying to eat their leaves. This phylogenetic tree explains why plant-based insect toxins affect us. 500 million years ago, early mammals and arthropods split from a common ancestor. We still share nearly identical neurochemistry with insects, and we survive exposure only because our body mass is significantly larger. When we consume these chemicals, they bypass our normal sensory navigation, while a natural reward, like finding food, produces a measured blip of dopamine. Drugs flood the system. To a brain evolved to weigh every calorie, this chemical surge signals a massive increase in biological fitness, the equivalent of having 16 grandchildren all at once. The brain misinterprets this toxic chemical flood as a monumental survival success, prioritizing the drug over every other biological need. Under normal conditions, our desire for food or sex shuts off through satiation. But because human biology never evolved alongside highly concentrated forms of these toxins, drug use lacks an internal braking system. This graph illustrates the mechanical tragedy of addiction. It shows how the brain's liking system, the actual pleasure derived from an activity, drops over time. Meanwhile, the separate wanting system, the raw drive to acquire the reward, spikes upward. The widening gap between these lines represents the lived experience of chronic use. Users become trapped by a mechanical need to acquire a substance that no longer provides them any actual pleasure. A hijacked biological mandate forces limitless desire on the user, regardless of how much pleasure the drug actually provides. Our ancestors rarely encountered highly concentrated drugs, so natural selection never shaped protective systems against them. This creates an evolutionary mismatch, a condition where our ancestral brains are damaged by novel, modern environments. Over centuries, human technology increased the danger of these chemicals. We moved from chewing mildly toxic leaves to distillation, and eventually to inventions like the hypodermic needle. These tools allowed chemicals to instantly bypass physical barriers and reach the brain. Modern chemical engineering has shifted the trajectory from natural plants to lab-synthesized opioids like carfentanil. These compounds are 10,000 times more potent than morphine. A single smuggled printer cartridge can hold 1 million doses. Human biology lacks a protective feedback loop for these concentrations, as it never encountered them during the millions of years our neural systems were taking shape. Some individuals fall into this trap faster than others. Environmental stressors like poverty and trauma interact with genetic variations, possibly the same variations that dictated how our early ancestors foraged for resources. Because addiction operates as a biological imperative, standard interventions consistently struggle. Criminalization and scare tactics do little to halt a mechanism embedded in our survival code. The most viable path forward relies on neuroscience. Researchers like Nora Volkow at the National Institute on Drug Abuse are mapping the brain to develop medical treatments that can block these hijacked mechanisms. We cannot easily change human nature. Our only hope is using science to protect our brain's ability to learn from being manipulated into a deadly vulnerability.